Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today we're going to be looking at some really interesting idioms and vocabulary words.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Hopefully these are words and phrases that you can work into your everyday life.
Right, spice things up a
Exactly.
little bit.
So let's jump right in.
Sounds good.
The first idiom that we're going to be talking about today is call it a day.
Okay.
So, you've been working on a project and it's getting late, or you're just kind of hitting a wall. You
Yeah.
decide, you know what, I'm done for now.
Right.
I'm going to call it a day.
Exactly.
But have you ever thought about where that phrase actually comes from?
I'm sure a lot of people haven't.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of a fascinating little journey back in time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we have to go back to the early 20th century.
Wow.
So think about bustling factories and workshops
Okay.
where workers were, really putting in a hard day's work.
Yeah.
And when the day was done,
Yeah.
they would literally call it a day.
Oh, wow. It was like the foreman would announce, all right, everybody, that's it. We've hit our quota. Let's call it a day.
So they were literally calling it a day.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And you know what's really interesting is how that phrase has evolved beyond just the workplace.
Oh, okay.
These days, you can call it a day on pretty much anything.
Really?
A tough workout, a frustrating puzzle,
Yeah.
even a marathon shopping trip.
It's funny you mentioned that because I actually did call it a day on a shopping trip just the other day.
Here you go.
It was getting to be too much.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to think about it that way. It's not just stopping, it's recognizing that you've made some progress and
Yeah,
you're
sweet.
preventing burnout.
Exactly. And you're setting yourself up for, more productive restart the next day.
Right.
Have you ever noticed that when you call it a day at a good point,
Yeah,
you actually get more done in the long run?
absolutely.
Because you're not, burning yourself out.
It's like hitting the pause button instead of just crashing. Exactly.
Right.
And that sense of accomplishment is really key too.
Oh, definitely.
It means you've reached a point where you're satisfied with what you've achieved,
Yeah.
even if you haven't finished absolutely everything.
So just to kind of really remember this, I, I like to picture myself literally calling it a day.
Yeah.
Checking things off my list, closing my computer, maybe even announcing to everybody in the room, all right, that's it for me. I'm calling it a day.
I love it.
And of course, you could always just say, I'm finished or I'm done
Sure.
or wrap it up or
Well,
conclude.
Hmm.
But there's something about call it a day
Yeah,
that just has that little extra oomph to it.
it does. It's got that finality to it. Like
know.
you're really done.
Okay, so moving on.
Okay.
Let's talk about a word that really captures that sense of renewal and feeling refreshed.
Okay.
And that is the word rejuvenate.
Ah, yes.
So think about that feeling after a great vacation
Mm-hmm.
or even just a relaxing weekend. You feel like a brand new person.
Right. Like you've hit the reset button.
Exactly.
And that's rejuvenation in action.
So what's interesting about that word
What?
is that it comes from
Yeah.
the Latin word juvenus,
Exactly.
which means young.
And with that prefix,
Right.
it's all about returning to that previous state.
So you're going back to that youthful energy and vitality.
Exactly.
It really is like hitting the reset button on your mind and body.
It is.
And you don't have to, go on some fancy retreat to feel rejuvenated.
Right.
Even simple things like getting enough sleep, spending time in nature,
Yeah.
or even just, reading a good book.
Those things can do wonders.
Absolutely.
What about you? What are some of your favorite ways to recharge?
Well, what's funny is you just mentioned one of them.
Okay.
I love to just take a walk,
Yeah.
in the park or in the woods.
Get out in nature.
Yeah, just get out in nature.
That's one of my favorites too.
Yeah, and it's amazing how these little things can make such a big difference.
They really can.
Now let's shift gears a little bit
Okay.
to a word that evokes a sense of elegance and personalization. And that word is bespoke.
Bespoke.
We often hear this word associated with, high-end clothing,
Right.
but it actually has a much broader application.
It does.
When you think about bespoke,
Yeah.
you might picture those scenes in movies where a character is getting a suit
Right.
that's meticulously crafted to their measurement.
Every detail is perfect.
Yeah, it suggests this level of craftsmanship and attention to detail that goes above and beyond.
Yeah, it's not something you just buy off the rack.
I've always wondered
Yeah.
about where that word comes from.
Well, it's interesting.
It sounds so sophisticated.
It does, and the elegance is definitely rooted in its history.
Okay.
So bespoke actually comes from the verb bespeak,
Oh.
which means to speak for or to order something. And it really gained prominence back in 17th century England
Right.
when tailoring was becoming this, highly specialized craft.
So instead of just, going to the store and picking something out,
Right.
you're having this conversation with the tailor
Yeah.
and explaining exactly what you want.
Exactly.
And they're creating something that's just for you.
It's all about customization,
Wow.
creating something truly unique to the individual.
And over time, that word kind of expanded beyond clothing.
It
To
did.
really encompass anything that was made to order.
Right, from furniture to jewelry to even software and experiences these days.
It's like the ultimate level of personalization.
It is.
In a world of mass production, bespoke represents this desire for individuality and quality.
It does. It's about investing in something that's made just for you.
Have you ever thought about getting something bespoke, or do you have anything that's bespoke?
You know what? I think we all have that desire for something
Yeah.
that's unique, something that really reflects who we are. And bespoke really captures that.
Okay, let's dive into an idiom
All right.
that's all about revealing secrets, often unintentionally,
Oh,
and that is spill the beans.
spill the beans.
We've all been there, right?
Oh, yeah, I've definitely been there.
Letting something slip
Right.
that we were supposed to keep under wraps.
Oops.
But have you ever wondered where that expression came from?
I actually have.
It's always intrigued me.
Well, there's this fascinating theory
Okay.
that takes us all the way back to ancient Greece.
Wow.
So they had a voting system that used beans.
Really?
White beans for yes, black beans for no.
Interesting.
And if someone accidentally spilled those beans, well,
Oh, that's a problem.
talk about a spoiler alert.
Yeah, no kidding.
They'd reveal the confidential results of the vote.
Wow, so it really is like spilling the secret.
Exactly.
You can't put those beans back in the bag.
Nope. Once they're out, they're out.
And that image of the beans spilling everywhere, it perfectly captures that idea of a secret being revealed.
It did.
Sometimes, unintentionally.
And what I find really interesting is
Yeah.
spill the beans implies a sense of carelessness.
Oh, okay.
Like you weren't really being careful with that information
Right.
you were entrusted with.
So it's different from just saying, reveal or disclose.
It is. There's a difference.
Spill the beans suggests a blunder.
It does.
Like you weren't trying to reveal the secret.
Right.
You just weren't being careful enough.
Exactly. And whoops, there it goes.
Yeah.
It definitely adds a more playful,
Yeah.
maybe even mischievous tone to it.
I like that. So next time you hear spill the beans, just picture those ancient Greeks
Right.
scrambling to gather up their voting beans.
I love that image.
And you'll never forget it.
Perfect.
So we've talked about call it a day. We've talked about rejuvenated. We've talked about bespoke and spill the beans.
What a collection.
I know we've got some more great ones coming up for you.
We do, so stay tuned. And it's interesting because while we often use spill the beans in a lighthearted way,
Right?
it's a good reminder to be mindful of the information we share,
Yeah,
especially when it comes to other people's secrets.
absolutely. Once those beans are spilled, you can't really put them back in the bag, can you?
Nope, they're out there.
Speaking of which, that brings us to another idiom
Okay.
that I've always found intriguing, and that is let the cat out of the bag. Has a similar meaning to spill the beans.
Right, they both involve revealing a secret.
But there's something about that imagery that always makes me smile.
It's a very visual idiom,
It is.
and the origin is a bit of a mystery.
Oh, really?
But one theory suggests that it comes from the practice of selling piglets in bags.
Piglets in bags.
Back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Some dishonest merchants might try to swap a piglet for a less valuable cat.
Oh, no.
And if that cat managed to escape the bag, well,
The secret's out.
the jig is up.
Instead of a plump little piglet, you end up with a hissing cat.
Exactly not quite what you bargained for.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder to always be wary of those who might try to pull a fast one on you.
Do you think that's where the phrase buy a pig in a poke comes from?
It's certainly possible
Yeah.
because a pig in a poke refers to buying something without inspecting it first.
Right. Which could definitely lead to some unpleasant surprises.
Definitely another example of how language reflects those practical concerns and even the trickery that existed in everyday life.
Yeah, that's what makes exploring idioms so much fun.
It is.
They give us these little glimpses into the past.
Right, and how people viewed the world.
Okay, well, let's shift gears again
Okay.
to a word that's all about precision and accuracy.
Okay.
Meticulous.
Meticulous.
Have you ever noticed how some people approach tasks with such careful attention to detail?
Oh, yeah.
Like, they're not satisfied until every single thing is absolutely perfect?
They're perfectionists.
Yes, exactly. That's meticulousness in action.
It's a quality that's highly valued in a lot of professions. from surgery to engineering to art restoration.
It's interesting, though. Where does that word come from?
Well, it actually has a pretty interesting history,
Okay.
rooted in both fear and anxiety.
Oh, really?
Meticulous comes from the Latin word metus,
Okay.
which means fear.
Fear. Wow.
And it's believed to be related to the word meticulosus,
Okay.
which describes someone who was overly cautious or anxious, always worrying about the smallest details.
So it's like their fear was driving them to be extra careful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But over time, those negative connotations faded.
Okay.
And meticulous came to describe someone who is painstakingly thorough and attentive to detail,
Okay.
which are qualities that are often associated with excellence and professionalism.
So think about like a surgeon performing a really delicate operation.
Right, or a watchmaker assembling a complex timepiece.
Exactly.
That level of meticulousness is absolutely crucial for success.
It's amazing how a word that once implied anxiety
Right.
now signifies something positive.
It's true the meaning evolved to reflect the value we place on precision and attention to detail.
And it really makes you appreciate the dedication and focus
It does.
that goes into those professions where meticulousness is so important.
It's a reminder that even the tiniest details can have a huge impact on the bigger picture.
Okay, well, before we get too lost in the minutiae here,
Right.
let's explore a word that's all about grandeur and magnificence.
Ooh, I like this one.
Opulent.
Opulent.
Think of lavish palaces, sparkling jewels, extravagant feasts.
Okay, yeah.
That's opulence at its finest.
It's a word that evokes a sense of abundance, wealth, and luxury.
I've always loved the sound of that word, opulent.
Me too.
It just rolls off the tongue,
It does.
and it conjures up these images of a life of indulgence.
And it's a word that has its roots in abundance.
Yeah.
Opulent comes from the Latin word opulentus,
Okay.
which means wealthy or abundant.
So it's not just about having a lot of stuff. It's about having the best of the best.
Exactly, the most luxurious and extravagant things imaginable.
It makes you wonder, though, about the line between opulence and excess.
That is an interesting question.
When does a desire for luxury cross over into something maybe less desirable?
Well, that's something that's been debated for centuries.
Really?
Some might argue that true opulence is about quality and refinement, while excess is just about ostentatious displays of wealth.
So it's like the difference between a beautifully crafted piece of jewelry
Okay,
and a giant pile of gold coins.
I like that analogy.
One suggests taste and discernment.
Right.
The other just screams, look how rich I am.
Yeah, it's a fine line for sure.
It is.
And it's something that each individual has to decide for themselves.
But regardless of where you stand on that opulence versus excess debate,
Right.
I think we can all appreciate the beauty and the artistry
Absolutely.
that often accompany opulent creations, whether it's a stunning piece of architecture
Or a breathtaking work of art.
or even a perfectly prepared meal.
It's all about creating an experience that engages all of the senses.
Have you ever experienced something that you would describe as truly opulent?
You know, I think witnessing a performance at a grand opera house comes pretty close.
Oh, yeah.
The intricate details of the architecture, the exquisite costumes, the soaring voices,
Yeah.
it all creates this sense of opulence and grandeur.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah, it's hard to match that.
It really is about creating an experience
Mhm.
that leaves a lasting impression.
Mm.
Wow. It's amazing how just exploring language can, take you to different times and places.
It really is. It's like we've been on a whirlwind tour.
Yeah, from bustling factories to ancient Greece to lavish palaces.
What a journey.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have, and through it all, we've seen how words and phrases can reveal so much about, our history, our values, even our fears.
Absolutely. But before we, you know what, I'm going to say it.
Okay.
Call it a day
I love it.
on this deep dive.
Nice.
Let's take a moment to recap
Okay, good idea.
all the treasures that we've uncovered.
All right, so we started with call it a day, that versatile phrase for signaling the end of a task or acknowledging a good stopping point.
Right, and we explored its origins, in the workplace.
Right, and how it's evolved to encompass any situation where we feel that sense of accomplishment.
Then we moved on to rejuvenate.
Ah, yes, that feeling of renewal.
That feeling of being refreshed.
Revitalization.
And we connected it back to its Latin root.
Right, juvenus meaning young.
And we talked about how even simple things, like taking a walk in nature,
Or reading a good book.
can help us feel rejuvenated.
Absolutely.
We also explored bespoke,
That elegant word.
with its 17th century tailoring origins.
To its modern day applications across all sorts of things.
Right, from clothing to furniture to, even software and experiences.
It's everywhere.
And of course, who could forget spill the beans?
Oh, yes, with those ancient Greeks and their voting beans.
It's such a fun way to remember
It is.
what that idiom means.
And we can't forget about let the cat out of the bag
Ah, yeah, with that imagery of the hidden cat.
and marketplace trickery.
Always be careful who you're buying from.
Right.
We also uncovered the really interesting history of meticulous.
From fear and anxiety to precision and attention to detail.
Such a transformation.
It is.
And finally, we explored opulent.
A word that just oozes with grandeur, luxury, and abundance.
So as you go about your day, listen for these words and phrases.
Yes.
Notice how they're being used in different situations.
Pay attention.
And don't be afraid to try using them yourself.
Absolutely.
You might be surprised how much you enjoy adding a little bit of, elegance or playfulness to your conversations.
It's all about having fun with language.
It really is. And remember, language is constantly evolving.
Right. It's a living, breathing thing.
So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep playing with words.
Well said.
That's a wrap on this deep dive, everyone.
And until next time.
Happy wordsmithing.